Recently, I came across Gundam Build videos by users like Potan Creates and Gio San Pedro. If you haven't checked their stuff out yet, I've linked a few videos below. In these videos, Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, or ASMR, is coupled with frenetic editing to drive the pulse of something mundane, building a model. This isn't to knock the skill involved in building a model, but instead to recognize how dissimilar these two things are. Building a model is a slow, deliberate process, and these videos are anything but. Suffice to say, once I saw these videos, I became addicted to them, and went down the all-too-familiar YouTube rabbit hole. The videos are outrageously engrossing, but their entertainment value stems from the skill of their composition. Through painstaking editing, these Gundam Build videos gained an undeniable character that makes them unique and expressive. The energy of these videos is found through montage, a practice first embraced in early silent films from the Soviet Union. Directors like Sergei Eisenstein pioneered montage and spent their careers exploring the technique. This has resulted in montage holding a significant place in cinematic history, where it helps filmmakers do many things, including what I said earlier. Manipulate a slow, deliberate process to make it a fast, engrossing experience. Thinking of montage in this way, I'm reminded of an Anne Carson quote from her autobiography of Red. "Time is an abstraction, just a meaning that we impose upon motion." Examining this thoughtfully, we find that this manipulation of time is exactly what cinema and montage do. They manipulate time in a way that piques our interest, letting us suspend our disbelief to follow the course of time that appears on the screen. This flow of time touches on another influential cinematic thinker, Gilles Deleuze, whose interests centered on the concept of time in cinematic history. For Deleuze, time plays a crucial role in both composition and narrative structure in film, which itself influences these Gundam videos. In what follows, I'll sew all this together, covering the history of montage, how it relates to Deleuze's work, and how both of these points are innovatively employed in Gundam Build videos. In James Monaco's How to Read a Film, he describes early Soviet cinema as more focused on formalism. Monaco defines formalism as an approach that's more specific, more scientific, and more concerned with the elements. It is more analytic and less synthetic, and it also carries with it a strong sense of the importance of function as well as form in art. This focus on formalism by Soviet filmmakers was partially out of necessity. Because film stock was hard to come by in the Soviet Union, filmmakers had to work with whatever scraps they could find, often forced to repurpose old footage to fill the holes in filmmaking projects. This reliance on repurposing led to some insights. Shortly after the Soviet Revolution of 1917, an early Soviet filmmaker named Lev Kuleshov started a workshop where he experimented with editing techniques. Kuleshov and his students found that when two separate shots were joined together, they would create a unique emotional context for the audience that wasn't explicitly apparent in either of the shots. This is most clearly demonstrated in the aptly titled Kuleshov effect. The experiment was simple. Using the same shot of an actor, Kuleshov followed the shot 3 different ways, with a shot of soup, of a coffin, and of a woman. Surprisingly, audiences reacted to each of these short sequences differently. To the shot of the man in soup, audiences said they felt the man's hunger. To the shot of the man in the coffin, audiences reported sadness. To the shot of the man and the woman, audiences felt affection. The Kuleshov effect taught an important lesson to these early filmmakers. It wasn't the individual pieces and performances that made a film work, but the composition of the whole. From Kuleshov's wellspring, Soviet filmmakers like Sergei Eisenstein explored montage, growing its scope and reflecting on its potential. Defining montage, Eisenstein said, "Montage is an idea that arises from the collision of independent shots. Eisenstein laid out 5 ways montage is achieved in film: intellectual, metric, rhythmic, tonal, and overtonal montage. Let's take a look at these now. Intellectual montage is similar to what we found with the Kuleshov effect, grouping shots together to allow the audience to infer meaning. A great use of intellectual montage is in the first Godfather film, when the baptism of Michael's nephew is shown alongside the murder of Michael's enemies. By editing the film in this way, we see the contrast between the holy covenant Michael is taking on for his nephew and the moral bankruptcy of his life. Without words, the editing here serves as a metaphor for the darkness Michael has embraced, showing how Michael's desire to protect his family has made him power-hungry and corrupt. Metric montage is montage that's cut like the beat of music. The cuts are paced to a frame count, forcing a rhythm on the film. Because of its strict adherence to length, metric montage feels patterned. Frequently, metric montage is used with fast cuts as a way to amp up the tension. In Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream, we see metric montage used to heighten the intensity of drug use, the quick metric cuts conveying the overwhelming effects of getting high. Rhythmic montage is similar to metric montage in that it has a pace, but in contrast to the strict rules for metric montage, rhythmic montage's pace often plays off of a film's score or a character's movements. Most importantly, rhythmic montage maintains continuity between shots, sometimes cutting to different angles just to keep rhythmic timing. Take this scene from Pulp Fiction. Rhythmic montage is used, but not just to contextualize the action on the screen. The cuts are also used to slowly focus in on each character, the tighter close-up increasing the tension as the scene progresses. Next up is tonal montage. In contrast to intellectual montage, where the audience infers what a series of unconnected shots mean, tonal montage crams it down our throat, amplifying the emotion of what's happening on screen. An example of tonal montage is in The Empire Strikes Back, when Darth Vader reveals himself as Luke's father. Each time after Vader speaks, we see Luke's reaction to what is said, and the emotional weight of these reactions determine the cuts. In this way, tonal montage uses the actor's emotion to drive the pace and impact of the scene. Finally, we have overtonal montage. Overtonal montage is the whole kit and caboodle. It's the combination of metric, rhythmic, and tonal montage to create a uniquely compelling scene. We see overtonal montage used to lasting effect in Psycho's infamous shower scene. By masterfully employing each form of montage, Psycho's shower scene grips us in a very memorable way. The rhythmic cuts give us an idea of the space and allows us to see Norman Bates enter the room. The metric cuts raise the tension and confusion of the moment, jumping around in time and space to disorient us. Then, tonal montage brings this all home for us, showing us the terror of the scene through the victim's own eyes. Like the Kuleshov effect, the theories on montage put forth by Eisenstein helped grow the language of cinema. Eisenstein's work highlighted the fact that meanings aren't held within a single shot of the film, but are instead the result of composition. This composition affects us as viewers, because it's not just the plot or meaning drawn from the whole, it's also an impression of time that's thrust onto us. In Gilles Deleuze's Cinema 1, The Movement Image, he describes montage as the determination of the whole by means of continuities, cutting, and false continuities. Similar to how I describe montage as an impression of time, Deleuze states that montage is specifically the assemblage of clips to constitute an indirect image of time. This notion of time can't be emphasized enough, because time is something that montage lets us shape. Think of a training montage scene in an action film, like this one from Rocky IV. Shot at the outset of the third act, this montage builds the conflict between Rocky and Ivan Drago by showing us how hard they're working to defeat one another. By jumping between shots of skills developing, different settings, different outfits, and other subtle changes, this training montage shows us an extended period of time within a matter of seconds. In doing this, time becomes condensed. Gone is the monotony of the intervening days and months of training, and yet the tension of the film's plot remains. In fact, the film's tension is amplified by the faster pace of the training montage, energizing us for the film's conclusion in a way that contradicts the actual flow of time. In this sense, montage allows filmmakers to manipulate time to do the impossible. It takes the monotonous and makes it compelling. This is how montage accomplishes what Deleuze is alluding to. It shapes the contours of time in a way that allow abrupt distortions to go unnoticed. Deleuze relates shots and montage to movement, insinuating that composition and montage allow films to capture not static poses or images of an individual, but something fluid. Much like the contrast between classical ballet's focus on poses and modern dance's emphasis on fluidity, cinema is a fluid expression. A frame by itself captures little of the meaning behind a film, just like an image of a dancer tells us little about the dance itself. Cinema works with the impersonality of time to give us a false conception of movement, the illusion that we are watching a consecutive unfolding of time that is actually anything but. Montage is the lifeblood that keeps this illusion alive, intersplicing shots, changes in perspective, and the momentum of story to keep monotony at bay and the illusion alive. Again, montage is an art, and in the way we're describing it, montage serves as an art to maintain the flow of time, doing its part to ensure the plot remains cohesive. It can be hard to understand the effect of time on film because one of the explicit reasons for montage is to hide the false continuities that are so prevalent in film. When watching any film, from Citizen Kane to Billy Madison, montage is present and blinding us to distortions in continuity. This is how we arrive at the crossroads of montage, time, and Gundam videos. Again, what interests me about these videos is the contrast in pace. How they take a slow, deliberate process and turn it into a tense, flowing interpretation of time. Through the marrying of metric montage with the tension manifested in autonomous sensory meridian response, or ASMR, these Gundam videos create something remarkably distinct. A unique expression of skill captured within another unique expression of skill. Of the many elements used in these videos, I think it's important to first highlight ASMR. ASMR uses the delicacy of sounds like whispers, crackles, and clips to stir something akin to a trance, focusing the mind and making it eager for continued stimulation. There's a certain musicality to ASMR, and that musicality ties perfectly with the quick cuts of metric montage. These Gundam Build videos aren't entirely metric montage, but metric montage forms the spine for each video, allowing other, diverse edits to give the videos character. In many instances, a long metric sequence will be followed up with an out-of-rhythm gesture from the creator, taking advantage of the strong contrast to impart the video with the creator's personality. When metric montage is the driving force behind the videos, however, its visual elements melt together with the delicacy of the sounds very well, to the point that the two resonate off of one another. In fact, these two elements are so complementary for one another that sometimes they create music from their pairing, as demonstrated in the following clip. This marrying of sound with manufacturing is nothing new, and we find evidence of its origins in many places. A straightforward connection is in work songs, which are as old as recorded human history. We've always made music to maintain a pace in our labors. So it's not surprising to see this practice appear in a new context. This marriage of pace and sound creates space for other elements at play in these videos. At first, it seems almost a mystery how models and metric montage, two things that are very dissimilar, could come together so well, but it begins to make sense when we investigate process. Broken to its basic elements, a model is just a series of instructions one follows to complete a process, and these videos seize on that premise. In fact, the notion of process is so central to the videos that they even seek to point it out, going so far as to show us the instruction booklet at the outset of each video and contextualizing each set of instructions before completing those particular tasks. With this underlying structure, we as viewers buy into the premise. The guide rails for this structure are present throughout. Each different section begins by highlighting a part of the instruction manual or an uncut sheet of model parts, showing us the area we're about to venture through. Because of these brief chapter markers, we accept the manipulation of time as pieces are sliced, clipped, cleaned, and colored in pursuit of the objective we know is coming. Guided by this light structure, the visual and audio components of these videos come together to create something that is simultaneously indebted to the history of cinema, but also an original expression of creativity. The novelty employed in using metric montage, something a person wouldn't think of when building a model, opens this process to a very unique approach that engages us as viewers. An analogous example would be hyper-slowed footage of glass breaking. In some senses, both videos are two sides of the same coin. By manipulating time, our curiosity is piqued. This is a central insight that drives art. In showing the mundane from a new perspective, art reveals what we so often take for granted. What's interesting here is how montage fits alongside these impressions of time. Yes, from a time perspective, the slowed down footage of glass shattering is interesting, but it also experiences different restrictions in terms of montage. What if we tried to edit the slowed footage? Could we use metric montage to create something as engaging as the Gundam videos? Likely not, because though cinema makes an impression of time, it remains indebted to time, and the way glass shattering is captured leaves it beholden to a different standard for interpretation. This is to say that the nature of the matter being filmed plays a role in how one approaches editing it, which reflects the creativity and nuance that is found in fit. This idea of fit is interesting, though, because these Gundam videos feature illusions that fit very well within the motif they create. It is not coincidental that these videos frequently feature a snack break within them, and why that snack break is so well suited for the video. When mentioned in abstraction, it doesn't seem as if something like this would work with the subject matter, but in practice the two fit quite well. If you think about it, the steps one follows to make a recipe are very similar to building a model, which allows for this distinct process to fit into the flow of time the video aims for. What we are shown in the best of these Gundam videos is montage in precisely the form Deleuze describes. The assemblage of clips to constitute an indirect image of time. Individually, each clip means little, but as they're joined together more and more, they come to reflect something. In the instance of Gundam builds, they reflect composition, but the success of this speaks to something larger. The components of cinema, the nuts and bolts that make it what it is and allow it to grip us, never change. What's reflected through these compositions can capture ideas that are loftier or more crude, but the basic structure changes very little. The creative license these videos enjoy is a testament to the elasticity of montage. In mastering the basic elements of editing, Potan Creates, Gio San Pedro, and other builders open a landscape for creative expression. As intimated by Deleuze, cinema allows things to become something other than what they are. Because of the distinctive perspective provided by video, and how editing creates an artificial impression of time, it allows us to express ourselves in a way that is unique among art forms. These Gundam Build videos are a reminder of the genuine insight and novel expression that is found within the cinematic arts.